Hey guys, welcome back to the Another Excuse podcast. I'm your host, Byron Greeley, and today's guest is Craig Gillham, the founder of Socium 10X. Socium 10X is a business that helps people and organizations transform by putting people at the heart of everything. In this episode, Craig takes us on a journey. He talks about how he went to some coaching sessions and suddenly came to the realization that he wanted to start Socium 10X, and how quickly he started Socium 10X. We also talk about the RAFT framework that they use, building strong relationships, and how leadership plays such a key role in a positive work environment. It's a wide-ranging conversation. Craig shares some gems, and I'm sure you'll learn a lot from it. Enjoy the show. Craig, thanks for joining me today. I'm really excited to get into it. To kick us off, could you give us an overview of Socium 10X and how it all works?
Hey, Byron. Thanks for having me here today. Socium 10X. So, look, I wanted to create a platform to help people and organizations transform. A little bit of uniqueness to it was wanting to put people at the heart of everything. Now, I know plenty will scream and shout that, but a sort of a defining moment for me was going on a coaching journey myself, and bringing that coaching capability into the business, which actually came about through acquiring a coaching business and the most fabulous coach who leads our practice in Therese Reichenberg. And it's that, yes, we can talk about tech and yes, we can talk about innovation, but, if we can unlock the real growth and potential of your people. So it's bringing that added dimension to what we do. And, it's really got me excited after sort of 30 years of industry. I know that sounds like an awful long time. I feel like sort of reborn in what I'm doing and super excited.
That's really cool. So you touched on it a bit there, but I'd like to just go into a bit more detail of like how you decided to start a business like this.
It's a bit of a story.
Please, go for it.
So about 15 months ago, I had coaching throughout my life, but just to reinvest and get some coaching. And my very first coaching session where you're sitting down with your coach and you're talking about potentially your objectives. And I thought I had some nice stretching objectives, but I was asked a question, and I can see this meeting still clearly in my mind. And the question was a simple one, and it was, what's your 10X? And my retort back was, what do you mean? And what came back from Therese at the time was, what's your dream? And if truth be known, I didn't need to think about it. I didn't hesitate. And I just threw it out there. The question that then followed was sort of what's holding you back? And I suppose that's what the coaching. But I think it was the process of realizing that I was potentially, I'll use an expression, sitting on my hands for 10 years. And something unlocked it. And, hence why, Socium 10X, the partnership with Socium, that's where the name came from itself. And the business follows. And I'm deeply rooted in sort of 10X principles, which I've benefited from, coaching from Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who's one of the authors of 10X is Easier Than 2X with Dan Sullivan. And again, those people have sort of transformed my life. The principles are so simple, but just so easy to apply. And you can just help people and organizations in the same way. And, I'm enjoying that journey.
It's amazing how some prompting and a few questions can make you come to a huge life-changing realization. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, and I suppose it's where you awaken something in you. And I suppose I'd always been delving in mentoring in a lot of the roles I did in consulting, C-suite executives, but mentoring is not coaching. So, again, it was a path that I needed to grow and go through my own sort of coaching programs. And now I'm sort of deeply rooted in, but the power of a positive mindset is phenomenal. A bad day can change by just thinking about it differently. Well, that's not the result I want. So do I choose to sort of a different action? And it's been an amazing turnaround. And you're never too old to learn, So
true.
Keeping curious and learning all the time.
Yeah. And what does Socium mean? What is there a story behind the name?
There is actually. I mean, the word Socium, sort of Latin word. One of the terms is connectiveness. And I've always. Something, if someone said, what do you do? I think I always sort of join the dots and the hub and bring all the spokes together. So, but someone I've known for about 10 years, he's the co-founder of a business called Socium, which are a global sort of people platform. So they grew up in the pandemic, very much staffing a lot of the technical startups that were arising at the time. And I always said to Will Gilbert, I said, I'd love for us to work together. And I thought, what a great springboard for a consultancy and coaching business to have the power of top talent that comes through Socium. So you saw that sort of bringing together of Socium and 10X. And I work in partnership today, with Socium. And we work very closely to bring that top talent to any engagement that we're working on.
Amazing. So are Socium and 10X two separate companies and they kind of joined together? Does 10X operate on its own? How does that all...
We've actually, we've kept, there's some private equity investment in Socium themselves. So we've created a separate entity where we've got the partnership relationship. So Socium sits as a sort of a global talent platform. And Socium 10X is there to drive what I call the coaching, the consulting, and the creative. Those are sort of our three legs of our stool, so to speak, or the lenses we like to place and help organizations and people for that matter. Because, I've gone into rooms and you'll laugh. And the CEO will tell me, I want some of what you've got, please. I just want some of that coaching. I want some of that energy. And, you're going to talk about how can I help you with your transformation or changing how your people are doing their business processes. And you walk away with, there's an interest in how you can help themselves and their people transform. And likewise, you get other organizations that are just not interested at this point in time to talk about their people. They want to start with a technology problem that they're trying to solve. So it's nice to have the angles that you can play in at different times.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you had this transformational coaching session. But what led to deciding to acquire that coaching business and then start a whole business out of it? That's not normally a leap that a lot of people take.
Not. Do you know what it is? I think that you get to a stage where you go, because this business, you could argue, was, an idea is one thing, but what makes a business start flying is the people. And all of a sudden, I found 4 or 5 relationships, and one of them was a brand new relationship in a coach. And I randomly, after sort of 6 weeks, was, what do you think about coming? I've got this fantastic idea. What do you think? And it didn't take long for Therese and a couple of others to go, this sounds fantastic. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. But, it's very recently I read Arnold Schwarzenegger's new book, which is Be Useful. And I think, that's part of the ethos here is just let's be useful. Organizationally to individuals. And someone would say, what did you take from Arnold's book? And I go, well, the most important thing I took was be useful. So, it's like, it's a great ethos. So it's sort of everything now I'm going in talking to customers and going, I want to be useful. Or if I can leave the room with the relationship, that's what matters. It's not always about closing a deal, closing a sale. On LinkedIn, I'm doing a lot of just communicating what my sort of foundational beliefs are. And if I'm working towards, if I can change someone's day by just bringing a smile to their face or helping them with a problem, that's a good thing. So, again, finding it a great channel to have a dialogue with a lot of people you don't even know. Yeah. And there's a lot of power. And like this podcast, it's great. You and I have been talking. And it's fundamentally, it's a way of you broker the relationships. And I think relationships can form a business. And that's really what's been the heart of Socium 10X starting to fly.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned that it was 6 weeks into the coaching, and then you decided to start this new project. How quickly did it take, like how soon after that decision did Socium 10X become a reality? I'm just curious about like the timeline.
We literally, let's call it from idea to inception was 3 months.
Wow.
I mean, it was, literally, I was in a consultancy running their digital practice, went away on holiday in July with the family. And I suppose one of my fears was not letting my wife down and my family down. And my wife just said to me, I've never seen you with so much energy. Just whatever it is, just go for it. And it was quite interesting because that made me laugh or chuckle a bit, because the coaching I was having was saying, it's you holding yourself back. It's not so that, you realize that, the fears holding you back are your own, not the perceptions that others were having.
Yeah.
Literally there was, we were able to launch in November. So, that 3 to 4 month period, I had to gently, ease out of my consulting role because I had obligations there. And that was a good business as well. I'll mention it was called Partners in Change. Very proud to have joined there, for about 15 months because I learned a lot. I learned a lot from the two founders, who put everything about customers at the heart of everything. And, again, never too old to learn. And I took that. And I just felt I had my dream that I needed to bring to life.
And so you mentioned you're working in a consultancy, and I'm curious what your role looks like now, or what the business does that's slightly different to traditional consultancy, if you could compare the two.
Yeah, I think the big thing is, and every consultancy says this, but having sort of been out there for a period of time, I want to leave organizations and individuals with the tools to do these things on their own. So, even coaching, whether it's teams that we're helping transform or people that I'm coaching, I actually go, my job in 6 months is to at least give you the skills to potentially coach people, people on your team. And it's that very same ethos. So we've been bold enough to say to some customers, and look, we don't have many, we're a small growing business, in the fact that, no, that wouldn't be the right thing for us to do. We should invest in your people and get them to a level. It sounds like everyone should be doing that, but they're genuinely not. But I do want to say we say we start with your who. Simon Sinek talks about, start with why. We're actually taking it a stage forward, because 10X for me is all about making the impossible possible. So it's what we call audacious dreams. Well, they become possible when you put the right people in front of the problem. And then all of a sudden, then you start rethinking, how can I make that impossible again? And that's how you get the growth. And if you don't make it all the way, that doesn't matter. You've at least done the progression. So it's what I call, you're staying in the positive territory. If you only did 50 meters of a 100-meter race, you still did 50 meters. It's better than stopping, on the starting line.
Yeah, true. And would you say that you guys focus more on impact rather than financial gain? Because a lot of consultancies have that model where you kind of are reliant on them instead of equipping the company with the necessary tools, because they're more focused on profit generating rather than making an impact.
I'm going to say that's a good question. So, often, let's say you were my customer, I'd often say, like, you're in this to make money. We're in this to make money. But you're right. I would rather be saying, how can we have impact to make your business grow? And that might even be coming up with strategies or revisiting vision. That's not quite what it is today. So sometimes you can give a message to a customer that they don't want to hear. But I think if you say it in the right way. So it's a bit of a balance. Part of me has got this drive, sort of servant leadership. So how can I support you? But I've got to monetize that. The business needs to monetize that. And that's we're not a non-for-profit, but in actual fact, I'd rather be doing real good than nothing at all. So it's a balance. And I think we're finding our feet, but we've always got to monetize what we do. Right. And I think it's a good conversation to anyone to say, look, if we can support each other and we both do well out of this, that's a great outcome. And financially, it's important. But again, if you just put your lens on people, your growth in the business is going to be unlocked, tenfold through people with a positive mindset. I mean, you'll know you wake up grumpy, you're not going to have your best day, right?
Yeah.
You wake up super positive and super full of energy, you're just going to have a better day. And,
Right.
same day, just different mindset. So it's no different to an organization or any individual.
Yeah, I agree. And in terms of monetization, feel free not to answer if you don't want to, but I'm just curious, do you normally charge similar to a consultancy where it's more billable hours, or is it outcome-based? How do you approach that?
A bit of both, but if truth be known, organizations are leaning more to outcome-based. So, and again, you've just got to be careful how much risk. If things you can control, you should always be willing to take on risk. Items of what you can't control, because there could be external circumstances. I mean, look, if certain levels of profitability are being looked for or growth are being looked for, and the market conditions don't facilitate that, that's a difficult thing to measure. So I think if you can get real tangible outcomes, those are the best things to measure. So I would always prefer that it's outcome based than just bumming seats and just generating day rates. We sort of have moved past those days.
Yeah, that makes sense. And now you've touched on like the importance of people within your business, or within any business. But I know in our last discussion you mentioned the word harmony. And I'm curious, what does harmony look like to you?
Yeah, I think it's, again, great question. So harmony is a balance, right? And I think often people I start talking to on the coaching front, everything they talk about is work. So I'm sort of using this as an example. So I'd say, well, does family come into it? Does your health come into it? And your wealth, your work, and all of a sudden, for me, those three dimensions in the scheme of a week and how you balance them, every individual can seek their own harmony. So I'm someone who is sort of 7 days a week, 24 hours. Sometimes I'm all over the place. But in actual fact, I've found more balance in my life now, more time when I want to spend it with my family. It can just be at a random time when I'm focused on work. You'll know this. It could be like 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. You just don't choose, but you can find real balance. But I think it's those three things for me, what I would call family, health, and work, and how you fit those in. And they're going to seesaw at different times. Sometimes you're going to have to put it but as long as everyone knows in that equilibrium how you're balancing it, I think you can really do yourself a good turn and create some good harmony in your life.
Yeah, I agree. It's important to know and understand that those don't always have to be in perfect balance, because we can beat ourselves up if like one falls to the wayside while we're prioritizing another. But if you're aware of it and you're making proactive decisions that, okay, now's a time of like deep work and I'm not going to be able to spend as much time with my family, and everyone in the family knows that that's what's happening, then it's normally worth it. But a lot of the time the work takes over and we're not communicating that, then we feel shit for it and it sort of spirals out of control.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And you touched on that there was something holding you back and fears involved almost for 10 years. But then all of a sudden you made that switch and you acted really, really fast. So have you, in other areas of your life, have you always been someone that has acted fast and one that takes action? Or was this just sort of a new realization?
I've probably been guilty of, not being the best follower of rules. I've always said, my wife and I will differ on this one. She likes a rule. I believe a rule's a guide, and then there becomes a point when you may acknowledge that the rule no longer applies. So, so that's a key aspect of how I sort of follow things that I do, which have actually sometimes been too fast. It actually goes, sometimes my pace has led to mistakes being made. But in actual fact, again, a mindset that I love now is like, you cannot fail. And what I mean by that is it's just continuous learning, right? Mistake gets made, just take the gain from it, and then, it won't be repeatable. So again, that's an aspect that probably always been part of me, but now it's like a key part of the framework of the business, the framework of the coaching that we do. And just, I suppose when you're living your business, and it's sort of how you're living your life, and you're trying to, that's where the energy comes from. I've gone out to a lot of guys who are interested in participating in this business model, and they just go, the energy is what we like. The energy is there's that's missing quite often in the marketplace, I think. And that buzz, I want to keep that buzz going.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And for those 10 years where you said fears were involved, sorry, I'm just going deep into this because I'm really curious, because so many people have fears that hold them back. They don't take action. So did you always want to, or for those 10 years, were you thinking of starting your own thing but never took the leap? Or was this just a great opportunity and you're now this is the perfect time, and you were sort of waiting for the perfect time?
Yeah, I'd always been, I left Accenture in 2002, and I'd had my own consulting business, grew it to quite a small number in the sort of before the 2008 crash. But a lot of the time that I spent it wasn't about financially what was being achieved. In actual fact, I just became, look, just keep doing what you're doing, and the right thing will present itself. So I used the phrase, I talk about this 10 years because I had to do some reflection when I got some coaching from Benjamin Hardy, and it was quite an eye-opener. I could reflect on the 10 years that I was waiting for something to happen, not making it happen. So, whatever those things that were holding me back, I think the mindset was actually something will present itself. And if truth be known, things did present themselves, but arguably they weren't quite right. And I just needed to make the mental mind shift, which was, you've got this dream, what's holding you back? And then once you figure that out, you're gone. You can soar. And look, you'll hit some bumps in the road, as someone said to me. I don't mind the bumps in the road as long as you're learning from them. Keep doing. Nothing for me is a setback. Just keep going.
Yeah. And if you had to give advice to someone who wanted to start their own thing, but may be taking the slightly more passive approach where something may come and then I may do something about it, would you suggest maybe taking a more active approach where you're open to new opportunities and then you take action on those just to see where they go? What would you suggest?
Yeah, I mean, this might make you laugh. The first thing I would say is have a dream. A dream can be an objective. A dream can be a small habit. It doesn't need to be the boldest thing because everyone's different. But the amount of people, friends of mine, people that have been incredibly successful, they actually have got to a stage where they actually don't know really what excites them anymore. And they don't have that. They have that dream. So I would almost say two things, right? A lot of us get worried about the risk that something could, financially present on the family, your kids, whatever it might be. But I think maybe sometimes just start with a little habit, try a little thing out if you're a bit, but just try it. I can talk, procrastination gets you nowhere. So yeah, I would go step over the line, get going. It doesn't mean you should give everything up if you're concerned. But I think very quickly, if you've got that dream, everything else just gets forgotten and you just head towards things in a different direction.
Yeah. I've noticed that in my life recently. It's kind of like a sense of inertia. If you take steps in that direction, things start falling in place and it feels like you're sort of stumbling in the right direction. But those blocks are your path is being laid out in front of you as you go. It's not all laid out, but it's happening as you go.
Absolutely. You can have days, weeks, months where you just think everyone you're meeting, everyone just seems to be the right conversations, and it's amazing. And then you can have setbacks, but then you go, it's not a setback because I'm on this path, so I'm happy.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of that path, that objective, that result, whatever you want to call it, is that dream. And I just think that anything that goes wrong, a bad day, a bad month, you forget about it because you're actually focused on the sort of, the North Stars, a lot of people would call it, the end game. And all of that for me is what I'm sort of positioning of, have a dream.
Yeah, I like that. And you've touched on the importance of talent and focusing on talent when you can. But why is it important for companies to invest in their talent? And what happens if they don't?
I don't want to be too outspoken on this one, but I will say, I remember I said it earlier, talent is people, right? And if you can develop talent, nurture talent, grow talent, there's one thing you get, right? Positive mindset in the workplace. I remember I read a book about 6 months ago by, I think it was Richard Koch, the 80-20 individual. And I think a fact he used was something, and empirically, I know he's got the facts, but it's got like a positive mindset, a positive person will give you 16 times more productivity than someone not. Now, look, I got honest with you, even if it was 2 times, it's still twice as high performance. And I go to, when you wake up negative, your day. And if you stay in that negative, your day is not going to be as productive. You know that. So I'm making it real. You're really positive. You're able to impact how you feel, influence others. That's going to help your organization be innovative. Product customer focus is going to be more on it. So why would you ignore that? I mean, we've cut so much cost out of organizations, operationally, technology. I think there is so much still to uncover about getting what you can really get from people with a positive mindset, people that you're coaching them in your organization because you're investing in them. And you're allowing them to coach others once they've got to a level. And it's a vicious cycle. And I think it just generates high performance and growth. And I just got this thing, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. And what have you seen to be the key drivers that creates that environment of positivity?
I think even in an organization, it's having a vision or a dream. Again, I get back to that dream word that everyone buys into. Quite often I'll walk into a company and there's lovely vision statements all over, but they've been thought over often by the C-suite. No one else has been communicated. And it's a difficult thing to do, but something that excites. Leadership comes in here in a big way, right? Leadership that's invested in their people, leadership that leads from the front, but also is able to empower and lead from behind, so to speak, goes a long way to drive the sort of positive growth in an organization. And it's difficult to find. I don't know how many people you've met in your career and you go like, that person was incredible. Because there are not many, right? But I could talk about 2 or 3 leaders I've worked for. I'm going like, oh my goodness, I'd work for them any day of the week. One of those people was when I was 26 years old. I've never forgotten that person. It was my first job in the UK when I arrived. So it just goes to show you when you meet people like that, you've got to embrace it and just learn from them as well. So that's an important aspect as well.
Yeah. So that point you just made of the majority of managers not being good ones is like something everyone can resonate with. You don't remember them for like you said, the good ones really stand out because it's a lot easier to stand out amongst a sea of people that are mediocre, and just going above and beyond, showing the people you manage a little bit more attention, showing that you care, can go such a long way. But they normally head down in their own work and not really focused on how much of an impact that can actually have.
Yeah. And look, we've all made mistakes. I mean, a couple of months ago, I did a link, once or twice in my life, I can reflect and go, in a meeting, I maybe didn't respect an individual the way I should have, right? And I threw it out there on LinkedIn, we make mistakes. And even apologized for it. And I think that's what we've got to do today, try to be the best we can by showing people that you make mistakes. And, sometimes you need to even ask for forgiveness. But it's important, and people embrace that because they see a human side. So I think that's an important aspect as well. Sometimes we forget about that when we go out into the big bad business world. But you know what? It's an exciting world out there. There's another book that I read called Moonshots by Naveen Jain, which was I loved. He talked about abundance versus scarcity, and having a mindset of abundance. I suppose the concept is you're just filling yourself with positive energy, but you're focusing on things that otherwise are possible, but everyone thinks are impossible. And it creates that positive mindset. And again, you will achieve things that you didn't even dream possible.
Yeah. And speaking of mindset, I know you guys use a framework called the RAFT framework to shift your mindset. Could you talk us through that framework and what each element of that framework means?
Yeah, sure. That's, again, great question. So when Therese brought her business in, she came with a trademarked framework called RAFT, which I absolutely love. It's so simple. So RAFT stands for, it stands for results, actions, thoughts, or feelings and thoughts. And just to flip that, so every thought, the way we think, it creates an emotion, a feeling, right? Every feeling generates an action. Those three things, the way you are thinking, the way you're feeling, and the actions you're taking, you can control those things. But what you can't control is the results that you're delivering. So, you might say to me, so if you're having so the way this framework applies, it can really help you. So if you tune into, I'm not feeling great, but you go, I'm trying to achieve this. If you can't change the way you're feeling, you're not going to influence the result. So it's really tuning into where's the heart of someone's mindset very quickly. Do we need to focus on the way you're thinking, the way you're feeling, and the actions you're taking? If you're slightly annoyed, it's invariably you're going to do the wrong thing. And I actually apply the model almost on a day-to-day basis of where I go, what's the result I'm after? And straight away I'll go, because of that, I'm going to take that action rather than the one that I was thinking of, which was based on some emotion or a thought. There are external circumstances that, impact those things we can control that makes it uncontrollable. But I think it can really help you when you go, okay, if I'm feeling this way, I know that it's not going to help me get my result. My result can be my objective, my tiny habit, my dream, whatever it is. Like I say, then you just start, and literally 8 out of 10 times, I'm shifting mindset on my own instantaneously. And everyone's different. Someone might want to spend a lot more time on just discussing how they're feeling and how they're thinking. So it just gives you different vehicles. And I even take it now into consulting. So it's no different. You're talking to a C-suite team, and you can start, as you know, what is the result you're after? And I'm not trying to coach them. I just, because, they're trying to, and then, they'll either have some growth aspirations, and then you'll go, well, how about 10xing that? And then they will look at you and go, well, that's not possible. I say, well, could we make it possible? And then you start going, well, what actions could we take? You can just bring it in. It's a wonderful framework, very simple. And I've brought it in. I'm coaching through the framework now. And it's just the simplicity of it. Everyone just seems to, and it's not rocket science, by the way. Most coaches would actually talk about every dimension I've just done, and most of them would be following something similar. I just found the way we're applying it has been fantastic, and it gives people that opportunity after the coaching. They can actually go and coach themselves and use the framework because they've got a tool.
Yeah.
And it's been great for our business. It really has.
That's a great framework. Thank you for sharing. It's really, really useful. But at the same time, like, you can't, it doesn't just happen overnight. Like, you've got to practice that framework, get used to thinking that way, noticing your actions and your thoughts and your feelings, and like realizing that you're in control of it all. And that was a realization that I came to after I went through some coaching, and it was a pivotal moment for me, because I'm also a huge fan of Stoicism, and that's also a huge message in Stoicism. Like, no one else is responsible for the way you're feeling. You're in full control of your actions. And I feel like it's a really important realization for people to come to, because it gives you that sense of autonomy that like you're in control of your destiny and what you're doing in your life.
Yeah. I mean, they talk about, I love a phrase, again, I forget the authors, but they're two Navy SEALs, I think, or Marines. They wrote extreme ownership. And that's the phrase, right? Extreme ownership. It's a case of you want to blame two people. Just take ownership yourself, right? And it's a hard thing to do, but it's so important. You're 100%. So that's another great aspect. But it is nice to know that we can actually very quickly change the actions we're taking by just tuning in. And if we just follow a certain act, it's not going to give us the result we want.
Yeah.
And if you want to change the result, then you can. But so nothing is set in stone. But it just gives you that whole model where you can actually introduce a little bit of flexibility and to get yourself into more positive mindset than not.
Yeah.
I'm proud to say, like, I'm the living and breathing case study, right? I've been like 15 months now. I'm the case study. And it's nice to bring that when you're living and breathing and you're leading a business and you've got a great team around you, and your relationships become paramount to everything you do. That's where the energy comes from.
And we're usually our own worst enemies. Like, we're the biggest culprits of holding ourselves back from taking action. And would you say that responsibility for our actions is that main driver, that main switch that makes us realize that like we're the ones holding ourselves back?
Absolutely. And it goes back to, you've probably picked up the theme today, right? If you've got that objective or you've got that dream, you're not going to procrastinate, right? You're going to be, I loved his book, Lewis Howes. I think that he wrote The Greatness Mindset, and he talked about, the fear. He talks about a lot about the fear factors, the fear of failure, the fear of success, and the fear of judgment. And quite often he says most of us as human beings are more fearful of being judged. It's like, I'm doing more speaking, I'm enjoying the podcast, but I know I want to create a platform and get on stage. And you think, well, there's some fear factor there, right? There's a fear of being judged. But in actual fact, if you can go and try to be useful, you can shift your mindset. And you will be a bit scared. And I've also had a discussion with a gentleman called Richard Mulholland, who does a lot of consulting and getting people to like be their best selves around public speaking and whatnot. And I want to get some more, training from him, because it's an important aspect to what we do. You create a platform. In actual fact, you're trying to be useful. You're trying to help. You're trying to help other people, which, goes to a very bold ambition to the business I'm in is, we want to be the best people-centered consultancy in the world. Now, that's not really measurable, but all it's trying to say is let's make a difference to people's lives in a positive way. And I've sort of, that's what I want to be part of. That's the sort of dream for me.
Yeah. And would you say that fears and blockers are similar or interchangeable, or would you say that there's a difference between the two?
Gosh. It's a little bit, that's a good question. I think they can be a bit interchangeable. I think a blocker is something that you can unblock quite quickly when you realize that it's probably down to some procrastination. But then, a blocker probably often doesn't start as a fear. But then I think you might allow it to become a fear because you'll resist doing it. But like I said to you, a lovely way to unlock or to unblock something, I think, is by having that focus on a dream.
Yeah.
If you know that you want to run a half marathon, right? And in the first 6 weeks of training, you've got to get up to 10 kilometers, that you'll probably have the right focus to run that 10 kilometers. The blocker would be, I don't want to get out of bed today and do my run, but I've got the dream of doing and if you stick to the result that you're after, you'll unblock it. The fear might be that, I don't think I'm going to do it. And again, you can probably use the similar mechanism of, but my dream is to do it, so I've got to get over that. So just by that explanation, I'm sort of talking too much, as I often do. you can see they're interchangeable.
Yeah.
They're very interchangeable.
Yeah, that makes sense. And would you say that you've always seen yourself as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. My dad has always said to me, my dad was in corporate life until 54, still in South Africa, then set up probably 4 or 5 businesses that all sold and listed as an entrepreneur. And he always said to me, you're not a corporate man, son. I never quite understood. So sometimes we all like to comply, but I like to think, I love the word. I think I've always been, it's been inbred in me to be entrepreneurial. I do like risk. I like to constantly learn, high energy, so I think a lot of it's just been in me. I love the ability to just keep learning and keep being curious. And I think the best thing about being an entrepreneur, I think the most, there's been hugely successful entrepreneurs. It doesn't have to be financial, but I think the thing that they pride themselves the most about is people around them. I think, an entrepreneur is going to be wholeheartedly about the people that they have around them in their business, in their life. And that wholeheartedly usually drives their success story.
Yeah. And that actually leads me to my next question. So you believe entrepreneurship was kind of innate in you, but do you think entrepreneurship could be learned too?
I think anything can be learned. But I think some people will always be risk adverse, and you can't expect them to. There are certain things you can certainly try change them. But I think some things can be about, we're changing personality. It's like rewiring the brain. And you know what? You can do that, but it's hard. So I think I go, nothing is impossible. But I also think, things influence us from our childhoods, the way we've grown up. And so I think from that perspective, 80-20 rule, quite difficult to change, to be honest. But I think there's always that 20% where it can be learned through hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. There is no defined path. I do believe that. But I think there are some entrepreneurs that are just incredible. There's some entrepreneurs that are 15 years old, and they've made their first $1 million already. You know what I mean? And they just don't stop. I mean, that's just incredible, right? So I think there are just different levels. So can that be taught? I don't know. That would be a pretty tough one to teach.
Yeah. And what has been the biggest challenge for you so far when getting Socium 10X off the ground?
I wouldn't even call it challenge. I think, like anything, new business, building the brand, building the credentials, and relationships are always going to be, building relationships is key to me. But, with that, some relationships are not going to work out, right? And that's business, but that's life. So I think you've just got to take those bumps and keep going. So I think relationships still are really important for me, but you're going to have some bumps along the way. And I think in any growing business, that's the thing that you want to nurture, but you're going to get challenged. And yeah, we've had some bumps, but good bumps. They take you to getting more identity and more direction in where you want to go. But yeah, you're going to have them. You're going to have them.
Right. And how did you know that the business was definitely worth pursuing? Did you sort of do any market testing, or was it just like wholeheartedly you believed in it and so you got it off the ground?
But of both, actually. I think I wholeheartedly believed in it. I suppose that just comes from track record. But you do, our board advisor, who's a friend of mine, Wayne Levings, I tested it out with him, and he's on the global exec at Cantor. And I talked out there with guys who are in top consulting firms, and they just said, we love the energy. Yeah, I mean, there is, I don't really believe in USP.
Interesting.
Because you can get lost on USP. I think, just try to do what you do well or better than others. And that's the secret ingredient. But I think I just saw an energy out there for something that I think is slightly different. And if not different, just do it well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Stand up, deliver the results. And like I said to the firm that I was with previously, partner with the people, do the right thing by the customers.
Yeah.
And that's paramount. And I think if you stand by those type of values, you can only be successful.
Yeah, I agree. And what parts of yourself have you worked on to become a better founder and leader, and what parts are you still working on?
I think the thing that I'm enjoying the most that I've learned about myself in the last year is actually, a lot of people call it the term is servant leadership, actually, where actual fact I now go, it's not about what I'm expecting from my team. It's what you're expecting from me. What can I do for you? Which is not easy all the time, actually, but it's where I'm getting a lot more energy. Then it also allows me to focus on the customers and the growth of the business and the sort of product direction we're going in. And look, I mean, I've even been told this, something you've always got to work at is being a better listener. I sometimes will not hear something, and there is a need sometimes to step back. The best advice I ever heard from an Accenture senior manager was when I was 25, and they said to me, "All a client sometimes wants is a listening ear."
Yeah.
And you at the age you were then, you thought, I have to say something. I have to look like I know something. I'm a young, bright superstar. But in actual fact, you'd say something, and that client was maybe in their mid-30s, and I thought, what an idiot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I haven't forgotten that, but I will go. That is something that I'll always be working on.
Great.
Listen more.
And if you could give advice to someone eager to start their own thing, but not really sure where to start, what would you tell them?
There's a few things, actually. I'd say be clear on what your what I call unique capabilities are, what your real strengths are, because don't think about a business that relies on other things. So if you feel you've got enough course, your unique abilities, go with that, right? With unique abilities, there'll be things that you're not good at. So you'll probably go, I don't want to be a sole trader. I want to have a couple of people. Find the right who's. Again, there's a great book called Who Not How by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan that really brings that to life. And it's how you can unlock your impossible with the right people. Thirdly, and I've said this, and you can shoot me for saying it again, have a bloody dream. Have a bloody dream. Because I tell you what, when you're having a bad moment, it's the one thing that'll keep you going.
Yeah.
Because trust me, bumps in the road will happen. You can get through them. And it doesn't matter. It can be, like I say, it's family, it's your health, it's your work, it's the balance of, or the imbalance of. Sometimes I've realized that it's more important for me to focus on something in the family than it is for something at work. If I do that, it's going to make work better. And that's what we talked about earlier. That's a bit of what we call harmony, right?
Yeah.
And harmony is different for everyone.
Yeah, true. And what is the long-term goal for Socium 10X?
Long-term is a mysterious word, isn't it? Long or phrase. But, actually, I haven't scripted any of these answers, but I actually think long-term, be useful, Byron. If this business, if the people around me, the team, if we can be useful, and in doing that, shape organizations to transform, at the heart, though, help people, be better, improve their lives. That drives great business, right? Great, and it creates a world of abundance. That's the dream. That's the dream.
Awesome. And before I end every conversation, I ask my guests if they have a question for me.
So I'm going to ask you my best question.
Awesome.
So what's your 10X?
What's my 10X? At this stage in my life, it's starting and running my own business. That's what it feels like to me at the moment. I think I'm pretty close to that. There are things in the works, that I'm quite excited about. And like I mentioned earlier, where there's some inertia, I feel like I'm heading in the right direction, and that's kind of the direction I'm going right now. So yeah, I'm pretty excited, and I think I've always gravitated towards running my own thing. I've always been interested in it. The reason why I started this podcast is because of that. And so, the only thing holding me back is myself at the moment. And so I'm working through that.
But just by the by, that's an incredible answer. That's where most people struggle. So seriously, so that is a fantastic answer. And you will make those dreams come true. I have confidence that you will.
Awesome. Thanks, Craig. Really appreciate it. And thank you for joining me today. I really enjoyed our conversation. If people want to find out more about you and Socium 10X, where can they do so?
Like so many or a billion people, I'm on LinkedIn, so pretty active on LinkedIn, just under Craig Gillham, and the Socium10x.com website. Good place to just get an overview of the business. Something I'm very proud about the business is we also, in March this year, we launched a practice in Africa, in Cape Town, South Africa. So for me, it's a great way to give back to a continent that I spent 26 years on, right? And the talent out there is unbelievable. And we can utilize that talent both in South Africa and globally. And just doing exciting things.
Great. Awesome. Thanks for your time, Craig. Chat soon.
Okay, nice one. Thanks, Byron.
Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you making it all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed the episode. One more quick reminder before you go. I have a weekly newsletter by the same name, Another Excuse, where I cover 4 topics: something that has changed my perception, a tool that could be useful to you, content that is actually worth consuming, and a concept that I try break down and explain. If this sounds of any interest to you and you need a kick up the arse, then you can subscribe at the link below. Thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you next week.